Hello, everyone. Let me ask you something. What would you do if the threat wasn't outside your home, but already inside? What if the forest you trusted to protect your peace had eyes watching from the dark? Tonight, we bring you two true horror stories. One takes place deep in the woods, the other within the walls of your own house. But both ask the same chilling question. How long was it there before you ever noticed? Asterisk, asterisk. When I was 22, I moved back in with my parents. Well, sort of. They let me rent out the downstairs apartment in our house, more like a renovated basement with its own entrance, bathroom, and just enough space to feel like I had my own place. It wasn't glamorous, but it was cheap, quiet, and came with free laundry. I didn't complain. Most weekends, my parents were away. They'd recently retired and started doing road trips, leaving the whole house to me. So yeah, I took advantage of that. One Friday night, I had my two best friends over, Ryan and Josh. We were just hanging out, watching the Ducks game, throwing back a few beers, blasting music way louder than my parents would have allowed. The fridge upstairs was bigger, so I kept all our drinks up there and left the door between floors unlocked. It was easier that way. No big deal. By the time the game ended, we were buzzing pretty good. Not blackout drunk, but enough to crash. Josh passed out first, then Ryan. The couch downstairs was massive, perfect for both of them. I said goodnight, locked my bedroom door out of habit, and passed out. I don't know how long I was asleep before I woke up. It was still dark out, and I could hear footsteps upstairs. I blinked, listening. The fridge, maybe? One of the guys grabbing water? It wasn't unusual, so I let it go. I rolled over and closed my eyes. Then the doorknob turned. Soft, quick. My door was locked, so it didn't open. But whoever it was, they tried. I had a snack, watched a bit of television from bed, and finally turned it off around midnight. I laid there in the dark for a while, my eyes adjusting to the room, and then I figured it was Ryan or Josh being stupid, maybe looking for the bathroom. I didn't even say anything. I just stayed quiet, hoping they'd walk away and pass out again. And they did. The footsteps faded, the house went still. I went back to sleep. But if I'd gotten up, if I'd looked, I might have realized something that would have changed everything. The next morning, Ryan and Josh were gone. Ryan left before I even got up. Josh was just waking up as I opened the fridge. I casually asked if either of them came into my room during the night. Josh blinked a few times, then shrugged. Nah, don't think so, why? I told him I thought I heard the door handle jiggle. He laughed. Dude, I was out cold. Maybe it was Ryan. I nodded like it was nothing, but it didn't feel like nothing. Later that day, I didn't give it much thought. I ran errands, hung out with a friend across town, came back around 10 p.m. My parents weren't due back until Monday, so the house was quiet. Dead quiet. Creak. From directly above me. I sat up. It wasn't loud, not a bang, just a soft, slow creak. Then another. I stared at the ceiling. Someone was walking in the kitchen upstairs. Step by step. Deliberate. I reached for my phone and opened the group chat. Hey, either of you back at my place? I asked the dispatcher to have the officers come to my bedroom window, because I wasn't going out there. No reply. Then I heard it again. The doorknob. Twisting. Slowly. Testing. Like whoever it was knew the door was locked, but still wanted to make sure. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at the knob, frozen in place. My phone still glowing in my hand. Then came something new. A knock. Just one. Soft, precise, almost polite. That was the moment my gut twisted. I wasn't hearing house noises. This wasn't a dream. Someone was on the other side of my bedroom door, and I had no idea who. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could, barefoot, heart hammering like a drum in my chest. I moved behind the dresser, grabbed the closest thing I could find, a metal desk lamp. Not much, but it was something. I crouched down, phone in hand, and started typing. To Ryan. To Josh. To my parents. No one answered. The doorknob stopped turning, but I didn't move. 10 minutes passed. Silence. And still, I didn't move. Eventually, I called 911. I whispered everything to the operator, voice shaking. Someone might be in my house. I didn't know how they got in, but they were here. Somewhere. Not alone. I waited at the window like it was the last safe place on earth. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator in the next room, and somewhere above me, silence. The 911 operator kept whispering reassurances. Officers are almost there. Just stay where you are. Don't move. I wasn't going to. Thina tap on the glass. I nearly jumped through the ceiling, but it was the police. I recognized the uniform before I saw the face. I unlatched the window, pushed it open, and handed him the spare key to the side door. He gave a small nod and disappeared. And then, the longest minutes of my life began. I crouched behind the dresser again, phone still in hand, listening to the creaks and clicks of movement as the officers entered the lower level. They called out police more than once. No answer. Of course not. My apartment wasn't big. Took them barely a minute to sweep it. Then I heard the stairs. Their boots hitting the steps. The door to the main house creaked open. My throat tightened. I wanted to shout something, tell them where to look, but I had no idea myself. Every door creaked. Every floorboard whispered. Then came a moment of silence that didn't feel normal, like the house was holding its breath. Then, hey, under here, move now. It was muffled, but I knew what I'd heard. A scuffle, a grunt, wood banging against metal. I ran to the bottom of the stairs just in time to see two officers dragging someone out from under my parents' bed. He was filthy, thin, face sunken and wild, wearing an oversized hoodie and gym shorts, no shoes. His eyes locked onto mine for a second. That stare, it wasn't blank. It wasn't confused. It was hate. Cold and personal, like I was the one trespassing. The officer holding him looked down at me. You know this guy? I shook my head slowly. Never seen him before in my life. They walked him out in cuffs. He didn't say a word, but his eyes didn't leave mine until he was out the door. And even then, I felt like he was still there. Somehow, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. But now it wasn't peace. It was the silence that follows something you can't explain. Something that had already happened, and might happen again. After they took him away, the house felt hollow, like it had been emptied of something, but not cleansed. I stood in the kitchen for what felt like an hour, all the lights on, just staring at the floor where the officers' boots had tracked in dust. I wasn't even sure if I was breathing. They told me there was no forced entry, no broken locks, no shattered glass. The doors were shut, windows sealed, which meant one thing. He didn't break in. He walked in. Somehow, some way, he had entered this house without resistance. Maybe it was during the party, when the music was so loud we didn't hear the stairs creak. Maybe it was even earlier. Maybe he'd been inside before we even got here. That thought stuck in my mind like a thorn I couldn't pull out. Had he been watching us? Waiting for the house to go dark? Had he meant to rob us? Or something worse? Then I remembered the first night. The footsteps. The doorknob. He didn't just stumble into my house. He tried to open my door. He tried to get in. He knew I was there. He was trying to reach me. And I did nothing. I almost opened the door. I almost made it easy for him. That wasn't the look of a confused stranger. That was resentment. Like he had a plan, and I ruined it. The police said we could file a report. But my parents didn't want the headache. Just some drifter, they said. Didn't take anything, probably sick. But I couldn't shake it. Because this wasn't just a break-in. This was something else. Something deeper. Someone was inside my home. Not to steal. Not to speak. But to hide. And wait. I couldn't sleep. Not that night. Not the one after. I left every light on. I locked every door twice. Even the cabinet doors. But it didn't matter. Because the thing that kept me awake wasn't fear of someone coming in. It was the sickening realization. He didn't come in that night. He was already inside. We thought we were alone. We thought we were safe. But what if he'd already picked the house? What if he watched us arrive? Listened to us talk. Eat. Drink. Waited. The couch downstairs could fit 3 people easily. We passed out in different rooms. None of us counted heads. What if we weren't just three that night? What if he was down there with us, sleeping in silence, breathing in the same dark? Now, every sound makes me flinch. Every creak could be a footstep. Every draft feels like a breath. Every silence is too silent. My parents changed the locks, got an alarm system, cameras too. But I still don't sleep, because you can't lock out something that never left. I moved into the cabin 5 years ago to escape the noise. Not just the city, the people, the traffic, the constant buzz that never let your thoughts rest. Here in Maple Ridge, New York, it's just me, the trees, and the lake. That's how I like it. My cabin sits deep in the woods, surrounded by pines so tall they blot out the sun before it even hits the horizon. There's a long gravel road that winds 2 miles from the highway to my property. No neighbors. No streetlights, no passing cars. Just silence. Real silence. The kind you can only find in the middle of nowhere. I thought I'd be happy here forever. But lately, the silence has changed. At first, it was subtle. Just a shift in the way the wind moved through the trees. Then about 2 weeks ago, I was sitting on the back deck with a beer, watching the sky turn orange behind the trees. And I heard it. A crack. Like a branch snapping. I froze. It came from just beyond the tree line. Not close enough to be a threat, but close enough to hear. I figured it was a deer, or maybe a raccoon. But then it happened again the next night. And the next. Always right after sunset. Always just far enough away that I couldn't see. One night, I heard something heavier, like a slow footstep over dead leaves. That time, I stood up. I stared into the woods, eyes straining in the darkness. But there was nothing. No eyes reflecting back. No movement. Just trees swaying gently in the breeze. Still, I went inside early that night. And for the first time since I'd moved out here, I locked every door. It always starts the same way. Right after the sun dips below the trees. When the shadows stretch long across the yard. When the wind dies down and the forest gets still. Too still. That's when I hear it. A scratch. Not loud, not frantic. Just one long, slow scrape against the outside wall of the cabin. Like claws on wood. At first, I thought it was a branch shifting in the wind. But then I remembered. There's no tree close enough to touch the house. The next night, the sound came again. Only this time, closer. Right outside the spare bedroom window. I didn't even move. Just sat on the couch, remote frozen in my hand, listening. It was soft, almost careful. Like something was testing the house. Testing me. I got up slowly, walked down the hallway, and stood outside the spare room door. The scratching stopped. I opened the door. The room was dark, still, undisturbed. I peeked through the curtain, shining my flashlight out into the woods. Nothing. No movement. No footprints. No animals. Just the trees. Standing tall. Silent. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the cabin felt louder than it should have. Every gust of wind made the windows flex like something was trying to push in. By the fourth night, the sound changed. It wasn't just scratching anymore. It was tapping. Deliberate. Rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the same window. Always the spare room. Always around 11 p.m. And that's when I stopped thinking it was an animal. Animals don't knock. By the end of the week, I was sleeping with a flashlight in one hand and a crowbar in the other. But sleeping isn't even the right word. I'd sit in the dark with the lights off, holding my breath every time I heard a sound. I stopped going outside after sunset. Stopped opening the blinds. Stopped sitting on the back deck with my beer. Because every night, it came back. And every night, it felt just a little closer. Whatever it wasn't afraid of the dark. It was the dark. The spare bedroom was the one space I never used. It sat there, cold and untouched, like a sealed-off memory. The door was always shut, the bed never made. I hadn't stepped foot in there for months. But tonight, something pulled me toward it. The tapping hadn't come yet. Not yet. It was just after 10. The forest was silent, and I was tired of waiting. I walked down the hallway with the flashlight in one hand, crowbar in the other. Every step felt like I was crossing into deeper shadow. When I reached the door, I stopped. I couldn't explain it, but the air felt thicker on this side of the house. Heavy, still. I turned the knob slowly and pushed the door open. The room was exactly as I'd left it. Untouched, but not undisturbed. Something was off. The curtain over the window was slightly open just enough to see out, but I knew I hadn't left it like that. I walked to the window and pulled it shut, scanning the trees as I did. Nothing. Then I turned back to the room. That's when I noticed it. The closet door, it wasn't wide open. Just cracked, 2 inches maybe. Still enough to notice. I stared at that crack for a long moment, and something in me went ice cold. I raised the flashlight, walked over, and with my free hand, slowly pulled the door open. Nothing jumped out. No figure, no face. Just clothes I hadn't worn in years and the stale smell of dust. I let out a shaky breath. Then I saw it. In the very back corner of the closet, wedged into the space between the floorboard and the wall, a piece of torn fabric. Dark gray, frayed at the edges. Not mine. I crouched down, hand trembling as I picked it up. It felt damp, cold, like it had been outside recently. And on the edge, barely visible under the flashlight, was a fingerprint. Smudged, long. I dropped it instantly. My mind raced. How long had it been there? Who left it? Had someone been hiding here, inside my house? I backed out of the room, flashlight shaking in my hand. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and for the first time since I moved to Maple Ridge, I felt like this wasn't my home anymore. It was something else's, and I had overstayed. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, every light on, staring down the hallway toward the spare room. The locked door didn't comfort me. It felt like it was hiding something, or keeping something in. I must have drifted off around 3 a.m. When I opened my eyes, everything was dark. The power was out. No lights, no hum of the fridge, no buzzing from the heater vents, just blackness. And then, tap, tap, tap. My eyes shot toward the hallway. It was back. Not scratching, tapping, right on the spare room window. I stood up slowly, every nerve in my body on fire. I didn't run this time. I didn't hide. Something inside me snapped. I needed to see it. I grabbed my flashlight and crowbar and walked toward the door. My hand hovered over the doorknob. It felt cold, too cold. I turned it slowly and opened the door. The room was freezing. The curtain covering the window, it moved. Just a little, like a breeze had passed behind it. But there was no breeze. I stepped forward, every footfall creaking like thunder beneath me. I reached the window. My fingers shook as I gripped the edge of the curtain. And then, with one swift motion, I pulled it back. For a split second, there was nothing. Just trees, moonlight, shadows. Then I saw it. A face. Pale, expressionless, eyes wide, pressed against the glass, watching me. I froze. Couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. The face didn't move. No fog from its breath. No blink. No reaction. It just stared. And then gone. Vanished, like a switch flipped off. I ran outside with the flashlight, heart slamming in my chest. But there was no one. No footprints. No broken branches. Just the forest. Silent, empty. And yet, I knew I hadn't imagined it. That face was real. And it had been watching. For how long, I didn't know. But tonight, it had finally let me see it. And that meant only one thing. It didn't care if I knew anymore. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the couch, eyes on the hallway, flashlight clutched so tight my knuckles went numb. Every shadow on the wall looked like it was moving. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like someone taking a step. I wanted to believe I imagined that face, but I didn't, and I knew it would come back. By sunrise, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to stay another night. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and called the sheriff's office. I told them someone had been watching my cabin, trying to get in, or already had. They said they'd send a deputy to check it out, but I didn't wait. I locked the door behind me and started the car. The gravel under the tires cracked like bones as I pulled out of the driveway. I stepped forward, every footfall creaking like thunder beneath me. I reached the window. My fingers shook as I gripped the edge of the curtain. And then, with one swift motion, I pulled it back. For a split second, there was nothing. Just trees. Moonlight, shadows. Then I saw it. A face. Pale, expressionless, eyes wide, pressed against the glass. Watching me. I froze. Couldn't scream, couldn't breathe. The face didn't move. No fog from its breath. No blink. No reaction. It just stared. And then gone. Vanished, like a switch flipped off. I ran outside with the flashlight, heart slamming in my chest. But there was no one. No footprints. No broken branches. Just the forest. Silent. Empty. And yet, I knew I hadn't imagined it. That face was real. And it had been watching. For how long, I didn't know. But tonight, it had finally let me see it. And that meant only one thing. It didn't care if I knew anymore. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the couch, eyes on the hallway, flashlight clutched so tight my knuckles went numb. Every shadow on the wall looked like it was moving. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like someone taking a step. I wanted to believe I imagined that face, but I didn't. And I knew it would come back. By sunrise, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to stay another night. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and called the sheriff's office. I told them someone had been watching my cabin, trying to get in, or already had. They said they'd send a deputy to check it out, but I didn't wait. I locked the door behind me and started the car. The gravel under the tires cracked like bones as I pulled out of the driveway. Maybe the scariest part isn't what we see. It's what we missed. The face outside the window. The breath under the bed. The signs that something or someone was already too close. So tell me, have you ever heard a sound in your home that you couldn't explain? Ever felt like you were being watched, but couldn't prove it? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy true scary stories like these, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the next time something taps on your window, it might not be the wind,